Making Stuff, the podcast about people who make something out of nothing. I'm your host, Eliza Tebow, a musician and journalist who spent years producing creative projects from scratch and paying attention to how things actually get built. On today's episode, we're sitting down with Renee Hill, a creative coach and self-help author based in Silver Spring, Maryland. Welcome, Gigi.
Thank you for having me, Eliza. Happy to be here.
So I recently met Gigi at a DC Writers Salon event in the district where she emceed and shared a passage from her book Storywork, which is about diving into the power of the narratives that we tell ourselves. So tell us more about that book and what motivated you to write it.
Absolutely. It came out at the end of 2025, but I started working on it honestly, probably like 2016. I started what I call like a memoir memory journaling project because I wanted to honestly dig up a lot of stuff from my childhood that I had never really addressed, troubling things, challenging things in my childhood that I was kind of taught that the way you move through it is to ignore it, repress it, leave it in the past, move past it. And I knew that there were reverberations from that showing up in my current life. And I knew from just the healing and self-discovery work I was doing that if I did not address those things, that some patterns, unwanted patterns in my life were going to continue to show up. So writing had become I started the project in 2016, right? Starting in like 2010, writing had become like my anchor. Like, this is how I'm going to find my way back to myself. So I was already blogging and kind of self-publishing books and just using writing in every way I could to find myself again. And I knew that there was something that I wasn't quite ready for that I wanted to write, and that it needed to start with me addressing these stories. So that's where it started. It took me a long time to just sort of dig and excavate and then organize and learn and, be a student of the craft and the process and all of that, to finally get to the point where I was ready. And I published other books in the meantime, and to finally get to the point where I was ready to put this book out to agents and editors and start that whole process that started in maybe 2022. It was published in 2025. So it was the culmination of years of just stopping, starting, losing faith, recommitting, all of the things that happen with, like this whole podcast is about making stuff. And that's part of the process, is just kind of knowing that you're going to feel that calling and it's going to keep calling. It's not going to leave you alone. But there are times where you feel like, what the heck am I doing? Am I wasting my time? Is this even like worth anything? So I went through all of that. And I really am grateful that I found community, because that's what really helped me to normalize a lot of the things I was going through and not feeling like I was failing, but like, oh, this is actually part of the process. This is how this goes. So, yeah.
Yeah. So a couple questions. So you mentioned that you had some things that had happened to you when you were younger that were showing up in your adult life. Can you give an example of one of those things that you end up addressing in the book?
Oh, yeah. It was mainly about growing up with an undiagnosed mentally ill mom, and the fact that it was a taboo thing to talk about in our family. We didn't talk about it. She didn't get treatment. And the effect that it had on me was that I silenced anything that wasn't acceptable or publicly accepted to talk about. Like, we had to present this image, and appearances were really important. And my family culture and Black culture in general is kind of like, you keep family business behind closed doors, and if there is a problem, you take it to church. So when you're growing up, you're just sort of absorbing these values and these norms within your family, and you think, okay, I'm just going to follow the protocol, and I became the people pleaser, the fixer, keep everyone happy, keep the peace. And I carried that into adulthood. So that's like sort of the patterns that I'm talking about, like knowing that I was perpetuating a lot of these same things, even though deep down I always felt like this tore our family apart, right? Like, estrangements happened. My mom didn't get the help she needed. She wasn't diagnosed. Ultimately, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia when I was in college. but she started showing signs. I found out later, well before I was even aware, right? So she went years, she wasn't diagnosed till she was like almost 50.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so mental health was something that was not discussed. My family wasn't educated about. I have so much compassion and grace for understanding, like that just the times that they were living in, they were doing the best they could.
Hmm.
But I reached a point where I was like, I have my own kids, I have my own mental health issues. Am I going to continue to perpetuate like these norms that were sort of passed on to me, these narratives and beliefs and fears that were passed on to me, or am I going to do something different? Am I going to break the cycle? And like these words are sort of like thrown around a lot these days, like being a cycle breaker and generational patterns, but it was very true for me. I was like, I had to make that decision. And writing really helped me with that because found it easier to first speak and acknowledge my truths on the page before my patterns of behavior and showing up in my life started to change. So first I was like
Interesting.
admitting things, right? Like I was like
Yeah.
finding the courage to admit these things on paper and processing it, building conviction, understanding on a deeper level, reading, researching, going to therapy, and then finding the courage to set new boundaries in my life, to express truths without shame, and to have this purpose beneath it that was like, you know, the shame is sometimes still there, but when you have this purpose of like, I'm doing this so my kids don't have to have the same experiences that I did, right? So that they know how to talk about mental health and emotional wellness, so that I'm breaking a cycle in my family. Like that purpose gave me the courage to face the shame and the fear to the point where it does eventually over time diminish it.
Yeah. So you talked about how the writing, the words would come before the behaviors would change. You kind of had to like process through writing and admit some things to yourself and work through that. Did that start as journaling as a child, or was that like just a sudden thing as an adult? Like, you know what? I'm going to just start writing what I feel. Like, how did that start?
When I was a child, I loved to write, but I didn't write for self-understanding as a child. I wrote to fantasize and escape. I wrote stories and I wrote to talk about the mean girls at school or the cute boys. And, it was a lot lighter. And I loved
Yeah.
writing. I loved English class and all of that. It wasn't until I was an adult and as I got older and the things I was writing about did become more mature, I did sometimes use writing to vent. Right. So I was really sad, really angry, really upset. I would go to my journal somewhere and I would just vent it all out. But it wasn't until I went to therapy in my late 20s when the therapist was like, it sounds like writing is something that you've gotten away from that has been a big part of your creative expression, your self-awareness, an outlet for you. What made you get away from it? And, do you think that might be a way for you to say these things that that you felt like you never had a place to say? Like, I just felt like I'm a really sensitive, sort of like living in the deep end kind of person. And I had learned to adapt that a bit because it didn't seem like there was ever an audience for that in my life. When I wasn't writing and I wasn't in creative community, right? I just got
Can I
away
stop
from
you
that.
there? Like, what do
Yeah.
you mean when you say there was an audience for that? Do you mean like, are you describing like highs and lows? Like you're having a great time, or you're feeling just like you don't want to get out of bed and people weren't responding, or like,
Got you.
or,
I mean, like, so small talk and like surface level conversations, right? And the more, like, I went through a phase where I was like a party girl and I was like fun. And I've always been, sort of easygoing personality to people. Of course, I have my close friends that I could go deep with, like my close girlfriends. But in general, the persona I put out to the world was like nice girl, easygoing, not sad, not deep, not dark. And I didn't have, and I, underneath it all though, I had this like Sylvia Plath, like, it's the end of the world
yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
time, this sad girl
Yes.
persona, but I didn't have an outlet for it because I wasn't writing, I wasn't creating at that time in my life. I was so busy maintaining this. And I was drinking and smoking weed all the time. So it was like I was numbing, right? So I was numbing that part of me with those substances and with the social life. This is like college, early 20s. And there just was no outlet for that. And so as I got further into adulthood and I had kids and I had a job and the party girl persona was dying down, and it was like, look, you start looking for meaning, right? And I just didn't have an outlet for when I was feeling like the sad girl inside of me was like needing something, but I would just smoke, or I would just find a way to numb that. And when I went to therapy, she's like, why don't you write? Like you're saying you need an outlet for this part of you that has these deep thoughts that, you writing could be that place for you, or some type of creative expression. But writing is the thing she said that really stuck, because I was like, you know what? Yeah, I never really thought of writing as a way to, I always just felt like it was a place to vent, and then you leave it and you go and you kind of, like I said, from the way I was raised, you suck it up and you keep going. You don't dwell, right?
Yeah.
You pray, give it to God. And in my way I was raised, like if you give it to God and you continue to dwell on it, then you're showing God that you don't have faith, right? So this is the way I was raised. And I started realizing in therapy and just the beginnings of starting to read certain self-help books and getting into the world of sort of self-healing and self-discovery and self-awareness, that there were some things that I had been taught that did not resonate with me, that I needed to reevaluate. And I needed to see, what do I think, what works for me, and develop my own sort of process, like for taking care of myself, for self-care, for self-discovery, that sent me off on this healing journey. Probably started in my late 20s. Again, like having the childhood that I had and never going to therapy till my late 20s, I was just like white knuckling it. I said I was self-medicating, I mean, I think I mostly self-medicated with weed, right? And just an achievement. I was like, working, trying to get promoted, trying to be this like really productive person, always
like the external validation of all that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I coped. And you just get burnt out. Like I wrote in the book, like I would put on this persona, this mask all week, and on the weekends I would just collapse. And my kids would see me like, I can't get out of bed. I'm like, laundry piled up, like all these things. And I'm just like trying to recharge so I can do it all again for another week of work and hustling the kids here and there. And, it was affecting how I showed up as a mom, how I showed up as a daughter, and all the things. So yeah, I can't remember what your question was and if I answered it.
Oh, that's it. You did. So you're talking about kind of what you got to this point in life. I'm wondering if was there like this key moment where you said, okay, enough's enough, I need to do something different? Or was there just like a gradual shift from what you just described to where you are today?
Yeah, I think there were certain key moments. Like the burnout really started to, I think it was like moments where I realized I was like failing myself and failing my kids. Like I just wasn't showing up for them in the way that they really deserved and needed me to, and I didn't know why at the time. I was like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? Like, why am I so tired? Why am I so spaced out? But it would be like these moments, and I was having relationship issues as well, like just feeling disconnected in my relationship. I wasn't fully showing up in my relationship. And so I think that therapy was a key moment when I started writing. I think that was a very key moment. And very soon after I started writing for myself, I started blogging. And when I started blogging, that was another turning point, because I just felt this gut instinct that this is what I needed to do. I hadn't been writing for myself, just from therapy to writing for myself to blogging was probably only a few months. I felt this gut instinct of like, I need to share this stuff. And part of it was probably my friends, because I have always had a strong girlfriend support network. And so I'm like so thankful for that. And I had a friend who I had wrote something on Facebook. Like I said, I don't do well with small talk. So on Facebook, people are like, oh, I went to get my nails done today or whatever. And I'm on there writing this deep stuff.
Yeah.
And she's Facebook, like, on Facebook.
Maybe just in a blog. That might be better.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
That is exactly what she said. This was like 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And she's like, you should start a blog. Like, there's nothing wrong. If you want to share on Facebook, fine. But
go
you
for
could.
it. But yeah. Right.
She's like, you should start a blog. So actually me and a friend of mine who was having a similar awakening, we started a blog together. And not soon after that, I started my own. So I had my one with her, and then I had my own. And it was just this gut instinct that I know there's other women out there like me that are kind of in the almost 30, maybe around that age where they're seeking meaning, all the they've checked off all the boxes that they were supposed to, and they're feeling disconnected, or they're feeling like
Something missing.
yeah, like, is this it? Like,
Yeah.
all these achievements are just only satisfying for a moment. And then I'm still hungry for more. I don't feel like enough. And so I just felt this calling to write to and for these women. And that was a turning point because I did get great responses. And I was like, people were really resonating. I was feeling that connection, like a deep, like soul level connection. And that was something I was missing in my life. And that gave me this like glimmer of hope, like this glimmer of maybe this is the thing, right? That's going to give me my vitality back, give me a sense of purpose. I felt great purpose in being a mom. I felt great purpose in like the loving relationships and family that I had. It wasn't that. It was just that I think when you have a calling or there's something you're supposed to be doing, when you're not doing it, you always feel like something's missing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that gave me this deep knowing that this was the thing. And I think that was the major turning point. And once you start, those little breadcrumbs keep coming, and things that were you had normalized or numbed or suppressed before, they keep showing up as like friction or like I can't go for this anymore, because you're just like awakening little by little. And so each of those became like these little light bulb moments of like, okay, I have to actually start showing up as this person I'm becoming. And that can be really scary.
Yeah. But there's I've learned more and more as an adult that with discomfort comes growth.
Absolutely.
So you kind of have to push yourself through that sometimes. I wanted to read a little sort of excerpt from an Instagram post that is on your page. So you wrote, "In story work, I wrote about a defeated narrative I've carried for most of my life. The belief that my mental health and sensitivity made me broken, destined to struggle no matter how hard I tried. Even with all the time, energy, and faith I've poured into healing, reclaiming that narrative is not a one-time breakthrough. It's a lifelong practice." Beautiful words. What are some of the ways that you've been able to develop a practice to kind of break those negative thinking habits? Because you're right. Like, you just realizing the way that I thought about who I am or the things I told myself, doesn't serve me anymore. That's a very important realization. But as you said, you have to kind of build new practices, new patterns, in order to kind of evolve into the person that you were meant to be. So can you talk a little bit about like what's your, like, do you have daily routines, just different practices that you do to kind of stay in the mindset that you want to be in?
Yes, absolutely. I think my dad died in 2017. And after that, I remember making a promise to myself to take better care of myself, and starting with some type of self-care routine. I didn't have one before. It was just kind of like, I thought of self-care as something that you do when you have time, when you got everything done, right? And I thought of it as more like how you pamper yourself. And you can't make good decisions for yourself when you are running on fumes and you don't even know what your needs are, right? I didn't even know what my needs were. So of course I'm operating from a place of lack, because I don't even know. I didn't know how much time I needed to myself, or time that I needed to move my body, or whatever those needs were. So after he passed away in 2018, I started, very first thing I started was a meditation practice. And I had tried meditating off and on through the years, and I always had this high expectation that you're supposed to meditate immediately, like feel different.
Yeah. Right. Or like totally empty your brain and like not think at all for hours on end. Right.
And I was like, this isn't working. I'm not good at this. I can't do this.
Forget this.
And I really went into it with I'm just going to show up and be present for it. So that was something that I did pretty consistently for about 5 years straight, from 2018 to 23. I just almost every day. I meditated for a minimum of about 15 minutes. So that I think that was a key factor in sort of like resetting my baseline, resetting my nervous system, teaching me how
Yeah.
to be still, to be less reactive, and to be present with myself. I started a practice of walking, right? So that was another core element of just being able to be present. I was so used to numbing and avoiding. Like I said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, like I just was like, stay busy,
Mm-hmm.
stay numb,
Mm-hmm.
just be reactive to everything. And so these were little ways of taking pieces of myself back. And really, I think each person needs to sometimes give themselves that exploration of what is it that I do need for
Mm-hmm.
myself so that I can think more clearly and actually when life presents me with a decision, make a decision that aligns with my values versus a decision that goes along with the crowd or pleases someone else or whatever. And I just needed to ground myself in these practices so that I could be more steady in that way. So it was meditation, it was walking every day, and it was like perfect because my daughter was in kindergarten at the time, so I would walk her to school and I would just like keep walking and I would spend like
Mm-hmm.
my start every day with a walk. Journaling was already a given because that had started that practice years before. But those three pillars were key things. But it just kept growing from there because once you start realizing, like, you know what else I kind of need? I need time to, like, really indulge myself in my passions and my interests. So it was like, getting back into reading, like, with intention, right? Like, not reading when I have time, but setting aside time to read, giving myself buffers in between little very operational practical things like giving myself buffers in between appointments like I'm someone who needs time to shift transition between
Yeah.
things so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
feeling burnt out and overwhelmed with work and just saying yes to what works for everyone else and adjusting to it but actually having my own boundaries and my own needs. So it was this cascade of gradually over time realizing more and more how to show up for myself and realizing that my self-worth, which was an issue for me, I struggled with my own self-worth and like asking for what I need, setting boundaries and things like that, and learning that I do that by setting the tone, by honoring myself. Like, this is a way of showing life that I believe I'm worthy by taking the time to take my walks, taking the time to meditate, by saying, no, I can't do it at that time because I have to do this or I need this. That was really uncomfortable at first because I felt like the old me was always like, got my sense of safety from pleasing other people. So when you
Mm-hmm.
stop doing that, you feel like, oh, I'm not going to be liked anymore. I'm
Yeah.
going to be considered difficult, or who do I think I am?
Who
So it was
yeah,
really
that's what I was thinking is
uncomfortable.
like, who am I? Who am I to ask for this, or who do I think I
Yeah.
am? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I didn't realize I had low self-worth, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that for if you would have asked me like, about my self-esteem and self-worth are like kind of different, but like myself, I thought I had high self-esteem and self-worth. But a lot of it is subconscious. Like we just don't really
Mm-hmm.
realize the ways that we're abandoning ourselves until
Mm-hmm.
we find a way. And with me, it was a lot through writing to see where our actions are out of alignment with what we really think and believe, right? And like what's
Mm-hmm.
really true for us. So I talk about that a lot in the book, that this disconnect between what we actually believe and what we do, or what we know and what we do. We can intellectually know I should be able to set boundaries and that this person will still, care. If this person really cares about me, they'll still be there for me. But the action of setting that boundary and
Yeah,
maintaining it,
yeah,
sometimes we're too scared to actually do it. We
yeah,
just go to our reflexive, familiar behavior.
yeah. Let me make this easy for them. Yeah, yeah. Totally. And now you've written several books, including some self-help books,
Yes.
right? And there's a workbook in that as well, too. So which kind of ties into the coaching business that you
Yeah.
do. Like you're focused on not just sharing your personal story so that it can help and assist others, but also working directly with clients about how to make their lives better, or get to where they're trying to go. So talk about how you added that, because I'm assuming you left your job. I think you were in finance in your mid 30s, You left that, started writing. At what point did you say, you know what, I want to add this other layer, this new layer of working with
Yeah.
clients?
Yeah, I started writing while I was still working, and I was kind of doing both for a while. And I
Okay.
remember getting paid, like my first paycheck for writing when I was still working. I was like, wow, they're actually paying me to do this. And that's when I was blogging. I wasn't working with clients yet, but I was blogging, and I got a couple of gigs doing some blogging for some beauty brands because I would talk about inner beauty. And so I remember I decided to actually take the leap and leave my job when I kind of I was reached this fork in the road where my job was asking me to get another license to, to sort of move on in that position. And it required a lot of intensive studying and like a lot, I wouldn't be able to do that and my my full-time job and the writing work I was doing. And I was struggling with the decision. And again, like that calling and just knowing if I'm going to make a change now would be the time to do it. And I talked to my partner about it, and he graciously gave me his support. And I was like, okay, now is the time to do this and try to make this work. And for the listeners out there who are creative entrepreneurs or who, are maybe whatever stage of the journey you are, when you first kind of start off, or at least I did, I was just saying yes to everything. I was just like,
Yeah,
I just
sure.
need to
Yeah.
bring some money in. And so I started off, I was doing the freelance blogging, and I said, how can I make money in other ways, like with what I'm already doing? I was already blogging and I had a little bit of a following, and I would have people reach out to me and say, well, how did you get started with blogging? Like, I have a story too, and I kind of want to use writing too. And so I would just get a little couple dollars here and there, just having consultations, helping people get started. And then I would get questions like, well, maybe not so much about blogging, but just like, I want to write to heal this thing or overcome this thing, but I don't know where to start. So it was almost like this other type of relationship where I'm not teaching them how to do something for like business purposes, but more so like healing and self-discovery. And I didn't know anything about that. I was like, I'm not a therapist. Am I allowed to do this?
Right.
So I hesitated with that at first. I kind of pushed it away because I felt like, I have a little bit of imposter syndrome, or like, am I allowed to do this? But what I did do was I started creating little courses, and they would just be like email courses where I would send people like a little lesson and then some writing prompts to go with it. And then I started making them into PDFs, and so I was selling ebooks, just kind of figuring it out. And they were really amateur and really rough, but people were buying them. And then I found, at the time it was called Create Space. That was Amazon's self-publishing platform. Now it's called Kindle Direct.
Okay.
And I published 2 books through that platform. And they were basically a curation of certain blog posts that I had written and certain newsletters and ebook, like things that had been popular with my following. I put them together into a book, and I made 2 of those. And so that was another source of income. So I was just trying to find income streams. And then once I started doing that, I gained a little bit of confidence, and I started taking some one-on-one clients as well. And I didn't get my first, and then I did another workbook in probably maybe 2015. I had left my job in 2013. So it was over those 2 years I was like piecing together a little income. By 2015, I had done the workbook as well. That was when coloring books were super popular. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. I
And
remember.
so it was
adult coloring books.
adult coloring books. So
Yeah.
it was a combination of coloring and journaling, and like mine was like a mindfulness
Smart.
workbook.
Yeah.
And that one did really well. And with each thing, I was just building a little confidence, but I was also like learning, like, okay, after this first rush, like, how do I keep selling this? Like after the first,
Yeah.
So all of these things you just have to learn as you go. And I remember during that time, Eliza, there was so many highs and lows, because I felt these highs of like, I'm making things and people are buying them and I'm making money. So in a way this is working, but I also felt like, but I don't know what's going to happen next month. Like one month I could make $5,000. The next month I could make $500. Right. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Right?
Yeah. Right.
It was very scary.
There's
And you're
a lot
just kind of
uncertainty.
learning. Yeah. I didn't really have a mentor or anybody I was working with to help guide me. For a while, for a few years, I went back to my job and was doing contract work for them. And that helped a lot from like 2015 to 2019. that helped stabilize things quite a bit. But yeah, that's where it started, was just sort of me quitting my job forced me to kind of like just jump in and say, let me just start trying stuff. And that was the energy I needed, I think, to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. So, okay, so now you regularly coach clients one-on-one in addition to having these books out there?
Yeah, one-on-one, and I have organizational clients now as
Okay.
well. And I work with literary organizations to teach classes and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you figure out, how to design a structure, like how to build a business when that wasn't your back? Well, I don't know. Do you have a degree in business? Maybe that is your back. Okay. Like kind of.
I mean, business, I was in the business school because I majored in marketing, but I wasn't learning
Okay.
I don't have any background in entrepreneurial
Okay.
business,
Yeah, because you have to create products, right? Like so you talked about, the coloring book workbook, but you also have to figure out, if we're doing sessions, are they one-on-one? Am I doing virtual or just in person? Are they 30 minutes? Are they, are we doing packages? And there's all the mechanics of that. So I'm curious how you figured that out. And then the part about that, which might be harder, of like believing in yourself and pricing things. Like I'm curious about that too, because you've got to, if you're going to charge a rate that, it, reflects the value that you bring, you have to value yourself first. So how did you work through that part?
Yeah. I did not have a background in any of these things. I did have an older sister who was an entrepreneur, but her business
Okay.
was so different. But I mean, just her philosophy on things and her encouragement was helpful. But when it came down to the nitty gritty, it wasn't really like, she wasn't able to give me directions and instructions like step by step like I would have been helpful. But what I do remember, one of the first things I did was I signed up throughout the time I've signed up for various courses and coaching support. So that was helpful. I remember one of the first courses I signed up for was B School with Marie Forleo. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. And I think she still has it going. This was a long time ago. This was like in 2013. And it was helpful in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways it wasn't, because it was very much a program that was like, start your business. I'm going to give you all these steps and I'm going to give you these worksheets to fill in. And I'm a very creative, free-spirited, I want to do things my own way kind of person. So and I'm very like, two things are true. I want step-by-step instructions, but I want to do it my own way. So I struggled with this class because I was just like, I think the biggest struggle was figuring out so much of what you said, like believing in yourself, like, do I have permission to do this? How do I price this? What is it that I even do? How do I even talk about what I do?
Yeah.
And all of these things just took time and experimentation and trial and error for me to figure out. I would just, with each season of my journey, I would say, this is what I do to the best of my understanding right now. And this is what I'm putting out there. And then I would find seasonally, like maybe when I talk about seasons, maybe every 6 months or so, I would kind of look back and be like, it's time to tweak this. I'm like, based on my experiences, I'm learning a little bit more about what I'm actually doing here. I've picked up things from maybe peers that I've talked to, classes that I've taken, books I've read, research I've done. This is how to better price this. This is how to. So it was a very gradual process. Like I remember my first blogging opportunity where the beauty company was paying me. I think they were paying me maybe $150 an article. So I just used that for other clients. When other clients were like asking me to do things, I was just like, I'm just going to use it as my baseline because I don't know. Right?
Whatever it
like
is,
150. That would
Yeah.
be my starting point. And so I
Okay.
used that for a long time. And then I remember when I was working for my company, I went back to contract for them. I was doing writing assignments. They were paying me, I think, $125 an hour. So when I got my first organizational client, I was like, $125
an hour. Yeah. Right. That
so
works.
I just
Yes.
was like, that could be my baseline. And
Yeah.
then I'll figure out over time. I know it's got to change. And as I learn and get more expertise and I build more confidence, I can charge more. But it took some time. And I remember I'm also like a very sort of spiritual, energetic, vibration, woo-woo kind of person. And so I remember one of the things Marie Forleo talked about was you want to price yourself in a way that you feel comfortable, like you can hold it. Like you feel like you can deliver, and it's like there's an energetic match that needs to happen. So if I'm saying I see this person who's charging $5,000 for the same thing I'm charging 1,000 for, I could say, oh, well, I should charge $5,000, but I don't feel like energetically aligned with that. It's just going to make me feel, it's going to make me shrink. It's going to make me feel imposter syndrome. I'm not going to do as great of a job. So that is also very abstract and kind of hard to explain to people. But I learned over time to kind of find the mathematical, the best I could, the mathematical amount based on like, okay, I think it's going to take me about this long to do this. And like sort of like trying to by hour or by task give a rate to a client, right? Like to break it down and say, okay, this is the amount. But then I would think about it also energetically. Like there's also the time, you know, there's also, how does this feel?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does this feel right? And so it was, that part is not mathematical at all. And it takes some time to build that muscle. And I'm still always building it, right? When I get a new opportunity, like, okay, how do I price this? Like, I don't want to. And so, but now my confidence has grown a lot. Where I'll say, like, most recently, a client that I got for the summer was like, what's your budget? I'm going to present you with, you know, for this amount, I could do this. For this amount, I can do these things. And if your budget is here, I can do these things. And so I wouldn't have done that before because I would have just, like, I just used to sweat and lose sleep over, like, these things. But it's just been a gradual, you know, anyone who's listening, I would say, like, trust your instinct, but also like and there's so many more resources now too, right? I feel like
ChatGPT,
right?
Yeah, what do people charge of that? Yeah,
yes,
right.
Yes, yeah.
That's great. So you've been now an entrepreneur for over a decade, right? What have been some of the biggest challenges, and how have you worked through those? If you've got like anything that comes to mind.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is like just the feast of famine of it all. Like I mentioned, like having really good months and then really low months, pivoting when market changes, life changes, platforms change. Like I used to get a lot of one-on-one clients and all the workshop clients from Instagram. And this was kind of before the whole algorithm thing. Like I've been on Instagram. I was getting clients from Instagram when it was kind of like, your timeline was kind of chronological. It wasn't based on interest or how much you clicked on. It was just kind of like, you know, who you're following, you're going to see. And I used to get a lot of clients that way.
Okay.
And then I don't remember when it started shifting, probably in the later 2010s. It started shifting and I was just like, my stuff wasn't getting seen and I was freaking out because I was like, my stuff isn't selling anymore. So being able to pivot, if you're using these different platforms to connect with your clients, how do you pivot? How do you find a new way, you know? And over time, it was like more and more life was showing me like you cannot have your whole client base be on through social media. Like you've got to find other ways. I was used to the bigger opportunities, organizational clients that I had coming word of mouth. And I was like, I didn't have any lead strategy at all. I wasn't reaching out. Everything was coming to me. And I was like, okay, that's got to change. I've got to figure out how to connect, like be more proactive about connecting with these like organizations and pitching myself. So I had to learn to build that muscle.
How did you do that?
So earlier I mentioned that like I took different like classes along the way and coaching and things like that because I didn't know either. I was like, I don't even know where to start. What do I do? Right. So I took a class that gave me a lot of really great ideas and they're really not like rocket science, but it just hadn't occurred to me. Reaching out to my network, right? And when I have something new and just people that had supported me in the past and, you know, I had worked with in the past and sort of reaching out to them, reaching out to people like organizations that I knew I could find a connection between what I do and what I thought they might need. But I just, in the past, I felt like, why would they, you know, it was sort of also that imposter syndrome. Like, why would they hire me? I'm a nobody. And realizing that when I put my materials together, like my resume and my, you know, a deck of like what I'd done, it's like, actually, I've done more than I thought, right?
Well,
like
somebody, I'm not a nobody. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like just really believing in yourself. Like, and if you're not going to, and that was, so the inner work of that was like, I had been doing all of this external stuff and building up a career, but inside I was still kind of needed to work on my confidence and my ability. I think that the reason why I didn't do a lot of outreach and I let things come to me because I felt more confident they came to me. Whereas reaching out, it's like you have to be confident assertively and proactively. And I
And
knew
you
that that
could
was,
get rejected.
you could get
Yeah,
rejected,
or get silence and crickets, which for
ignored.
a lot of people is that's the norm, right?
It's
Like
even
only now
harder.
and then. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like have the resilience to keep going, the persistence, the conviction to keep going. So that was the inner work I had to do. And I started in the class. I remember she positioned it like keep a folder of all your pitches and all your rejections, all your acceptances, because even if you have a folder full of rejections, that's you putting your skin in the game. Like you're out there,
Mm,
you're doing it. And I found, especially in the past couple of years, that the more I do pitch myself, I get a lot of rejections, but I get more random reach outs as well. It's very weird. Like I told you, I'm like kind of a weird person, right? Like it's almost like I'm creating the energy, this magnetic
mm-hmm,
energy
mm-hmm.
that I'm putting myself out there and it's like life is responding with so for example, I pitched to maybe like 10 or 15 different maybe organizations or opportunities this year that I got rejected from. And three opportunities, new clients that came in this year, I did not pitch. They found me and they were like perfectly aligned clients, right? Like one found me through the Writers Center. One found, at least like he still can't remember how he found me. I think because he's like, did you used to write for Grub Street? And I was like, no. He was like, well, I don't know how I found you because I thought I was on Grub Street's website and I found you. Who knows? But all of those rejections, which I was really disappointed in, right?
Yeah.
But, and you can't control, but like these other things, and I'm someone who doesn't really see things as coincidence. I see it like I created this receptive energy around myself by putting myself out there that somehow brought these other things to me. So I think that learning how to just be in the energy of being more opportunistic and being more resilient to like less afraid of no. Like I'm going to keep on if I see an opportunity that I feel aligned for, I'm going to go for it. And if it's a no, I know that there's something better coming, right? Or something better for me. And it's just with practice of actually doing that, you actually believe it. Like, and it actually starts to show you, and you have evidence of it, and your confidence just really starts to build. So I think that that's where people get stuck a lot is like, the rejections can wear down on you. The uncertainty can wear down on you, like how to pivot when something's working and then it just stops working. It's really scary and really frustrating when it just stops working. Learning how to manage through that, I've done a lot better with saving because I would be like, when you're self-employed, it's like sometimes you don't know, like it's just how it's going to be. So I save in such a way that when I have the slower months, I have a little nest egg so that I
Yeah.
can, so I'm not freaking out. Well, I didn't used to do that. Again, not rocket science, but it just never occurred to me to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So little practical things like that have helped a lot. And I think anyone listening to, like, give yourself at least, like, to the extent that you can, like 10 years. Don't think you're going to like, some people do figure it out in a couple of years and more power to them. But
Yeah,
for
that's
me,
great. That's great.
great for
I love
them.
that for them. Yeah. Right.
But for me, it's been 10 plus years of just trial and error, falling down, getting dirty, getting my knees scuffed up, highs and lows to get to the point where I'm like, I think I see what's going on here. But I've also always been open to having a 9 to 5 or getting something that's more stable if it's aligned with what I'm with what I'm doing. I'm not so much that I'm against it. It's just that as you mentioned in that excerpt that you read, being someone who is like, highly sensitive. I was diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago, which made a lot of things make sense for me too, in terms of like practices and how I need to run my business and how I need to take care of myself. I have like these needs. And so I need a job and a livelihood that allows me to be me and do things a certain way. So if an opportunity came that was more stable and if it was a W-2 type of thing, I would still be open to it as long as I could have that flexibility to I'm still want to do my workshops and teach and all my writing stuff. I'm not somebody who's just like, I have to be an entrepreneur. It just turned out that that's what works best for my mental wellness, and for the lifestyle that, keeps me where I need to be emotionally.
Yeah. The one last thing I wanted to touch on at the very beginning, you said something about how you'd found a community with your work, which I assume you know people have really responded positively to a lot of the work that you put out there. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just some, the interaction that you have with readers or clients and how that feeds into your process of moving forward and moving your business forward.
Yeah, I think I started off with the old energy I had of like, I have to present this polished facade all the time, and I always have
Yeah.
to look like I have it all figured out.
Right.
So even when I first started blogging, there was community in the sense that back in those days, bloggers really supported each other, and there was this, sense of community, but I still was showing up to it like with a bit of a mask. Like I didn't want to ask for help if I didn't know how to do something. I didn't want to reveal when something didn't work out. I was scared to fail publicly or to be seen trying too hard publicly. And so that kind of clouded those first few years. I made a couple connections that were really authentic, which I'm thankful for. So I had a little community of people that I would keep it very real with. But outside of that, I was too concerned with appearances. And so my book project in particular didn't really start to grow until I started saying like, hey, will you look at these pages and like give me some feedback? I had been scared to do that before because I was just so like hoarding everything. Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to
Yeah.
ask for help. I didn't want to
Yeah.
be seen trying too hard. And so that opened the door a little bit. And I was like, wow. And as I was taking classes also and dabbling a little bit in community, I always felt, even that first class I mentioned with Marie Forleo, I always felt like there was something a little bit missing for me. So, like going to workshops and classes, it would either be like business type classes where I was learning how to do things, or it would be like craft where I was learning writing, literary devices, and things like that. But I never found a community that I really was seeking, which was more about the emotional inner work of being a creative and being an entrepreneur, and how do you take care of yourself, how do you deal with rejection, how do you deal with overwhelm and frustration,
Which
and
might be the most important part to get help with, because if you feel terrible, like you're gonna be like, well, forget this, forget the whole thing.
yeah, I was like, there's nobody talking about this, is it just me?
Right.
And I remember reading The Artist's Way, and I remember reading Big
Yep.
Magic, and reading books where they talked about these layers. But I didn't have like a community for that, so I decided to start one, right? So I started one, and it was really, it made sense because I was doing these one-off workshops, and I had these people that would come to my workshops again and again. And I had this one girl, I remember she was like, geez, yeah, I've taken this workshop for you 3 times, but anything you put, I just want to be in the space because you talk about the things I'm dealing with. And so I was like, let me start a community myself. So I remember I kind of stopped and started. I started one right around the time I got my first traditional book deal. And it was just, I was a little bit overwhelmed, so I closed it. And I was like, I need to put this off till I can really give it full attention. And about a year and a half later, I started up again in a different way. And I said, this is, and it's called the Inner Story Writing Circle. And it's for writers of all levels, whether you're writing as a hobby, writing for healing, writing to publish. It's about the inner life of the writer, right? So we study craft, we study all the aspects that it takes to make writing like a long-term sustainable part of your life, right? So it's not just learning craft. It's not just like this narrow vision, like tunnel vision to publication and success and all of those things. It's also how do you find, your voice, and how do you let your family know this is important to you so that you can set aside time to write, and just all those little things that come with being a writer. And that's what I really needed. And it became like, I don't think I would have, the book journey would have been what it was without them. Like they were so supportive, and I consider myself not just the founder of it, but a member of it, right? So like we support each other, read each other's pages, help work through challenges and things like that. And that just having that core space, that safe space, also allowed me to open up more broadly because I feel like as the leader, I feel like I need to lead by example. So it gave me courage to all those things I was afraid of before, like opening up more on social, being more visible and vulnerable on social media as I needed to be, right? I wanted to show them I could do it, you guys can do it too. And so I would be sort of like that teaching artist, like I'm in the trenches with y'all, but I'm also kind of going to take on the responsibility of showing you, like maybe being a couple steps ahead so I can show you that if you put yourself out there, it will pay off. And this is how you find your community, your readership that will buy your book when you finish it or support your newsletter, whatever it is. So yeah, it's been a really beautiful sort of give and take having that community. Yeah.
That's great. Where can people find you online? So find your books, find your services if they're interested in coaching.
Sure. I think a great hub for everything is my main website, which is allthemanylayers.com. And if you go there, you can find my workshops. You can find my the Inner Story Writing Circle. I have intensives a few times a year, which are like longer, like multi-week workshops. And then I also have a Substack where I post pretty much weekly. And on Substack, I talk about creative courage and all of the things that come along with that, creative courage for living your life the way you want, also for your creative projects. So that's another way to find me, and that's called thelayers.substack.com. And I'm on Instagram at Gigi Renee Writes. 2 E's on the Renee.
Okay, great. Well, that is it for this episode of Making Stuff. If you found this conversation engaging and inspiring, you can find more resources and episodes at makingstuffpodcast.com. There you can also buy us a virtual coffee so we can keep the episodes coming. Thanks so much to our guest, Gigi Renee Hill, and thank you for listening.